Yamolo ay makungunloa Malide nyumalo ay makungumewa ay makungunloa Neta manyolo ni yakungunyala Mogasina musojugu debe kungumbo ila.
So I was sitting at Java one day and I had this flyer in my bag thinking about the word matriarch, and I was like, I don't know why I was thinking, I can't remember now, but I was thinking about the word matriarch and I was like, why in no feminist discussion or in any women empowerment, even Beyonce things, you never hear the word matriarch. And it's such a powerful, heavy word. Like it carries all this weight of like a female leader. It's not just a woman, it's a woman who's a leader. So I was just thinking about how it's an underused word. Like we always talk about the patriarchy and patriarchs and everything like that within families and stuff, and within communities, and how we live in a patriarchal society. But the word matriarch is often usually only used in like wildlife and stuff, talking about elephants and things. So I was just struck by that. And then I was like, how cool would that be to have an album called Matriarch? Because I'm pretty sure. So then I did a quick Google to check that there was no other albums or songs called Matriarch, and there wasn't, that I could discover on the internet. And so I was like, well, it'd be cool if I could write a thing about the journey of womanhood, and like the end goal is to be a leader in your community, in your family. So that's what I knew what the end was. So I was like, what's the beginning? And I was like, the beginning is, like we always make these jokes, I guess, as Africans, but even like Black people in the diaspora, we always make these jokes about our ancestors, the ancestors are blessing you today or whatever. And we say it as a joke most of the time as millennials, but I don't know, like that used to have a lot of power. That actually used to mean something. So I was like, I think that's where you start then. You start with the women who came before, which is how I started with roots. So like where you come from. I remember this vividly actually. I was sitting on my bed and I was playing guitar. I knew it was called Roots, and I liked the line "lay your roots" because it captures everything in one line. Like it captures a whole sentiment in one line, in 3 words. I liked that lyric because what I say about, being mixed race, or really being from anywhere and having issues with your sense of identity or your sense of where you're from, you're told that like unless you were born here, unless both of your parents 100% from this nation or this tribe or this like culture or whatever, you're not really that thing. So I liked the idea of lay your roots. It communicates a sense of agency, like you can do something, like you can choose to focus on something, you can choose to claim something, So even if people want to tell me I'm not Kikuyu because I don't speak Kikuyu, or I'm not Kenyan because my mom is Australian, like they can say that, but at the same time I do have ancestors, I do have roots, I do have like a lineage, like that. I have people who came before me, and even though I don't know much about them, because unfortunately we don't have a lot of documentation about a lot of these things, and a good documentation of our genealogies and stuff like that in Africa, they still exist, and I wouldn't exist if they didn't exist, so therefore they are part of me. So Matriarch, the song, it was going to be the title track of the album. I was super nervous going into writing it because I knew exactly what I wanted to say, but I was like, this is the title track. And title tracks have a certain weight to them as well. So I was like, I want to have an anthem on this album, because I don't really write in verse-chorus structure very often. That's not the way I write naturally, but I was like, I want an anthem where there's like a line that people can yell, and like women can yell and feel like empowered in some way, and have a bridge that's just like full of fire, So I just sat down at my keyboard, and this is literally the story of how I wrote all these songs though, but I sat down at the keyboard and I was just playing around, and that the lyric, "We'll be the matriarchs of our generation," came into my head. And I feel like the word generation is only ever used in like that anthem kind of song, because it's such a powerful word, I guess, like talking about your whole generation of women. Then I started to think about what do I want to say? Like, what do I want to tell the world as a woman? Like, what I'm not going to put up with anymore. I wrote 254 in 2016 for an assessment, actually, for university. I did a composition class, and the brief was to just write a song. And you could write about anything. I had a sound in my head, a more Kenyan influenced sound, like a melding of like the Kenyan and like the indie, but also the jazz side. And it was in my head, but I had never actually written a song like that. I sat down and I started to just play around with chords. And then I was like, why don't I write a song about Nairobi? Because I was feeling super homesick, because it was like, I think, September. So I hadn't been home in almost a year. And I was just missing it. It's kind of like a day in Nairobi. I was like, why don't I write a song about just like a day in Nairobi, a nice day in Nairobi. So like, it starts with when you wake up to blue skies and a dusty city and everything, and then how at nighttime, some places just completely clear out, and then the clubs like start to just be popping, and everyone is like out and dancing, and you're seeing everybody you know. And then in the bridge, I say creep out into your edges, lie in peace between green hedges. So like Runda, Karen, like you don't have to go very far, even within Nairobi, to find just like even places like this. This is in the heart of Nairobi, but it's so green and it's so beautiful. And so just that idea that you don't have to go far outside Nairobi to find like this beautiful solitude and nature, and it's so lush. So yeah, so that was the story I was trying to tell. It was like a perfect day in Nairobi. Mine was still when I thought this album was an EP. And so it was the middle song on the EP. So in my head, it was like the middle point. The album sort of starts in the past, talking about the women or the people who came before. And then it kind of goes through like, I guess like young adulthood and like folklore and stuff. And then it gets to the middle. And then from the middle, I guess I see the rest of the progression of the album as what I want or what I hope for. So mine, I wanted to capture where I am now, as in like in that time. Now, today, sitting here at my piano, what do I feel? So then the next lyric is separate your fears from your failures. 23 and I find myself clutching at straws, missing life as a teenager, plucky and flawed. All this time I never knew how hard it was to find what's mine. And then so the last lyric of the song, which I added later because I didn't feel like I had finished the song. And the last lyric is 23 and I find myself standing on a stage, wondering how a 12-year-old girl has reached this place. All this time I never knew how much I could love what's mine. So it's that idea of, okay, get some perspective. Like when I was 12, I could never have imagined my life now, you know? And when I'm 30, I'll probably never have imagined my life, you know? So sort of appreciating where you've come from and appreciating, even if it's a tiny stride, that you made any stride at all.